Big Mom is the Kirk Cousins of One Piece. If you're able to go toe-to-toe or even beat her, then you're probably one of the strongest characters in the verse, and you're probably a true contender for the One Piece. But if you can't do that, then you're never really going to have a chance to get that, and you're destined for a hard knock life. The Marines are going to come after you, and you probably have no shot, because if you can't beat Big Mom, you definitely can't beat an Admiral. What's up, everyone? This is Big News Exists, and for those of you who don't know who Kirk Cousins is, he's a quarterback in the NFL, currently playing for the Vikings.
You like that?
He was formerly playing for the Washington football team / Commanders, although that's a terrible name, so we're not calling him that. He originally started out in the league playing behind another quarterback named Robert Griffin III, but eventually ascended to becoming the starting quarterback of that football team, and then left inside a very lucrative contract with the Vikings to become their quarterback. Over his time in the league, Kirk has been what some would consider the benchmark for what makes a great quarterback. If you are better than Kirk Cousins, you're probably considered elite. And if you're worse than Kirk Cousins, you're probably either a marginal quarterback or just not very good at all. So he's really used as a benchmark, and I'm not saying that he's a terrible player. No.
Put some respect on my name.
Could be a great quarterback at times, and he can also be a terrible quarterback at times. And that's really why he's used as a test to determine how good a player is. Taking aside what your personal views of Big Mom is, I think we can collectively look at the conversations that were had in the community and realize that this kind of sounds like Big Mom. There's some people who think that she's great. There's some people that think that she's bad. I know that the character itself has a lot of flaws, and a lot of the reasons that Big Mom isn't as dominant are personal character reasons. We can all admit that. You know, she's quirky, just like every One Piece character is. But at the same time, that kind of helps distinguish her between the true greats. Kaido, for example, has a lot of different quirks, especially his drinking and overall his anger. But the interesting thing is, for that character, considered the strongest character in the verse, probably stronger than Shanks in some people's view, I don't know about mine, but the strongest character in the verse, the strongest creature, it was his moniker, his quirks really helped him and made him stronger, and he could use them in battle, and that really propelled him to becoming who he was. People saw those quirks and they didn't say, oh, this makes him weaker, this makes him a bad character. That enhanced his character and enhanced him as a villain. For Big Mom, it's always kind of the opposite, where people talk about her quirks and talk about how the fact that really holds her back and maybe caused her to not win some battles and maybe dropped in some power rankings because they think that those quirks are detrimental. And for those of you who are NFL fans, you know exactly what I'm talking about when comparing to Kirk Cousins. At some times, he looks amazing. He can drop it in the bucket. He can make crazy passes. But at other times, it looks like he's seeing ghosts out there. You could basically say that Big Mom was doing this at Whole Cake Island when Luffy had no business showing up there and getting out of there alive. And the real reason that he did was because of Big Mom's quirks, because of the fact that the picture was broken and she went into her hunger pangs and all this stuff. There was a lot of stuff going on that if Big Mom could have just gotten that under control, she would have handed Luffy back in a body bag. But let's be clear, Whole Cake Island is a perfect example of what I'm talking about here. Luffy wasn't considered the 5th Yonko or even a Yonko caliber pirate until after his antics at Whole Cake Island. And that's mainly because of the fact that he was going up against Big Mom and that he was able to escape and that no one on his crew died, and he was able to leave without a trace, without getting chased down by them, and without her catching up and stopping them. For everyone in the One Piece world, especially the world government, that was kind of a litmus test for Luffy. He was not at the caliber to be able to fight and make noise in the New World, but then after he fought her and after he was able to escape, that's when they said, okay, this guy's legit. And I think there are other examples of this happening throughout the story that I'm going to talk about too. So let's take Kid. Obviously, at this part of the story, if you're kept up with the manga, you know that Kid and Law have beaten Big Mom. We don't know if she died or if she's still alive or what really happened, but we do know that they won, they were declared victorious, and their bounties reflected that. We also know that before Luffy was at Whole Cake Island, Kid had been there and had beaten a Sweet Commander. Now this is One Piece, and then what I'm gonna say next makes sense to me, and hopefully it makes sense to you. If it doesn't, definitely let me know in the comments. The bounty system, although not necessarily great for power scaling, definitely is a good indication of what the world government feels about a certain character and how they feel of them as a threat. And for Kid, we already know that prior to this part in the story, we don't know the exact backstory of how this happened, but we know that he lost his arm fighting Shanks. And if there's a character that's strong enough to fight Shanks, lose his arm, but still survive, obviously that's a pretty strong character. And Shanks is, you know, the godfather for Paravision's sake. And he's, you know, one of the biggest, most powerful, dangerous, scary people to the world government. I don't know why he was meeting with them, whatever. We're not going to bring that up. But anyways, Shanks is super strong, and everyone knows that, especially the world government and everyone who basically reads the newspaper. He's been plastered all over it. So for you to go up against him, survive without an arm, that's a pretty strong feat. And Kid's pre-Wano bounty kind of reflected that. It was high, that's for sure. But it wasn't as high as when he was able to beat Big Mom in Wano. The world government looks at people with huge bounties as the biggest threats. Kid only got a 3 billion berry bounty after he beat Big Mom. And for me, that's a big jump. 3 billion berries is bringing you really close to where Kaido and Big Mom were in the world government. That's really close to Yonko status. That's the same bounty as Luffy and pretty close to Buggy. So if you're there, you're on the cusp of being what's considered the strongest pirate leaders in the world. And the world government considers you somewhat of an equal because they can't go into the new world and kick you out of it, like they did kind of with the Grand Line. And I know that he's not going to be considered one of the strongest just for surviving Shanks, but it is interesting that after he beat Big Mom and didn't necessarily have the greatest showing, but still beat her, then that's when the world government says, okay, nope, you're strong, we're scared of you, here's 3 Billy, get away from us, we don't want to have to fight you. And the same can kind of be said for Law too. If we're looking at Law, his character and his fruit, obviously he poses a threat to the government. They know how strong he is because they made him a warlord. They know about his fruit because they know about every fruit, especially if they knew the true nature of the Gum Gum fruit. Do you think they wouldn't know about the eternal youth surgery that Law could be performing? Similar to the conversations that were had about Robin at the time, it seems like capturing or at least having Law under the control of the world government should be a huge priority, and he should be seen as a massive threat if he's not under their control. But again, he didn't get a 3 billion bounty until after he beat Big Mom. And yes, Big Mom is a Yonko. We all know that the world government considers her one of the strongest, but again, there are always up and coming people. To tie in the NFL, there's always people coming into the draft. There's always a next generation. Obviously, there's the worst generation, which would probably be the greatest draft of all time, but still, there's always people coming in the ranks. There should always be people getting bigger and bigger bounties. Maybe not to the levels of the Yonko, but there should always be some that are at least challenging or could be considered candidates for Yonkos. And there are characters in the One Piece world that have huge bounties that aren't Yonko or aren't candidates for Pirate King. And look at Zoro. He's obviously not going to be the Pirate King. That's not his goal. That's not his dream. But he has a 1.3 bill bounty. And that's even higher than Law's pre-Wano bounty. And he was a warlord and they know exactly how strong he is and what kind of threat he is. But finally, Big Mom's power itself is a good determination of how strong a pirate is, whether they're going to be a candidate for Pirate King or not. And maybe it's just really strong hockey, or maybe it's just having a really strong will. But only the strongest characters aren't impacted by Big Mom's ability. Luffy and Jinbei aren't gonna get their souls taken through Soul Pocus, but characters like Pedro and Zeppo aren't strong enough to be able to resist that and will get impacted by that. Just that ability alone can help us determine who's actually strong and who's not. No matter what you think about Big Mom, you do have to recognize that being a Yonko means that you are strong and that there is a benchmark for your power. No matter what you think about Big Mom, I think we can all agree that she is somewhat of a benchmark to determine the strongest pirates from ones that are weaker and or more subordinate. And because of that, I do think that she's the Kirk Cousins of One Piece. So let me know what you think in the comments. I appreciate you so much for watching this video. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great rest of the month. Have a great rest of the year. Follow your dreams. This has been Big News Exists, and I'm out.